To the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome to the first budget workshop of the Board of Education. Such a pleasure to see you here this evening. I know the Superintendent of Schools and the Board of Education sent a letter inviting the various boards to attend, so we're delighted to see you, many of you here this evening. This is the first workshop tonight. We will have a second workshop on next Thursday, January 17th. If there happens to be inclement weather, if there's snow or hail or whatever, we will meet on January 22nd, just for your information. I just have a few preliminary comments about the format this evening. As you recall, the board started this process last year, and we found it very useful and very informative to allow you to make your comments and suggestions to the Board of Education as we deliberate on this budget. However, I would just like to remind you, while your comments are always useful and valuable, this is a Board of Education special meeting, so I would ask for the courtesy of making notes of your comments, and we will have a question and answer period at the end of the meeting after the board has had ample time to review each one of the areas that will be presented tonight. You should have received a copy, and if not, please come forward and get a copy of what we will be discussing throughout the budget tonight. The only other request that I would make is that at the end of the meeting you return it for us so that we will have them for next week's session. Also, just as a reminder, this hearing will be broadcast on Channel 22 and rebroadcast for members of our community that were not able to attend this evening, as well as on our school district website. So I know the Board of Education members are anxious to start the review of the meeting, but I would be remiss if I didn't take just this quick opportunity to say to the Superintendent of Schools, the administrative team, and the teachers, we understand that many, many, many months of hard work behind the scenes go into preparation of this budget. So I just want to go on record for the members of the Board of Education thanking the entire team for the hard work that you put into presenting such a good budget to us this evening. And I know we're going to have a few questions for you, so I won't speak any longer and turn the meeting over to you, Mr. Galea.
Well, thank you, Kathleen, and good evening. Happy New Year to you. And as Kathleen mentioned, we greatly appreciate our local officials on other boards with us this evening, members of our staff as well. And I know we have some parents in the audience who are also very interested. The proposed budget that you have before you tonight is very supportive of the tradition of excellence that we have here in the Waterford Public Schools. And so it's very strategic for us when you look at the slides and we go through the budget tonight, when you look at the icon. We're really focused around how do we continue and sustain the level of excellence that we have here within the Waterford Public Schools. The other thing that's very important for us, we're committed to continuous improvement. And when you're dealing with challenging economic times, it's critical that you be innovative and you be creative. We so often hear about it's important for us to think outside of the box. And so as we work through this financial plan for the Waterford Public Schools, we really pushed ourselves to think about how do we do things in different ways, not to go backwards, but only to go forwards and actually anticipate and expect greater results. The other piece that was critical for us, as we identify our next level of work, and that's what this financial plan supports, it's critical for us to be financially responsible. We know that we're challenged. We're going through a reassessment of all of the property in town. The community has been very, very supportive of the public schools. And it's important for us to really be good stewards for the community here in Waterford. So we're staying the course. And what that means for us in this financial plan is we're taking the next step. We're on a trajectory to do great things here in our public schools. And what's important for us is to continue that focus. So we're moving forward with this financial plan as a learning organization. And as we share information with you tonight, and there are four of us that are going to be presenting different areas of the budget this evening. We're going to reference different pages, and what we've attempted to do with the slides is identify the pages that we'd like you to refer to, and I think that will be helpful. The other thing that I hope you note is throughout this budget, the format. We've changed it a little bit. We want it to be more user-friendly, to give you more background information, and I think over the last 2 years, that feedback has been helpful. So, having set the context, what I'd like to do is just start, if we went all the way to the end, and we looked at where does this budget settle, we're looking at a 1.51 increase over the current financial plan for 2012-13. Something to keep in mind, what does that represent? That represents additional dollars of $666,196 beyond what we currently have within our budget. Just to use as a measuring stick, for every $441,993, that's representative of 1 percentage point. And I think that's going to be important to keep in mind as we go through the stressors on this budget, the way we've been able to contain costs, avoid costs, be more financially efficient in developing this particular plan. So at the end of the day, we're looking at a budget of $44,865,560. That is the investment that we're looking for in the Waterford Public Schools for FY14. So tonight, I'm going to take 10 or 15 minutes just to provide a general overview, set the context for the financial plan that you have before you. Phil Russell will go over the district-wide services as well as the contracted services. Probably Craig, Phil, and I are really going to tag team around tuition because, quite frankly, that is the driver in this budget, and I think it's going to be helpful for us to all understand what that all means. Craig will take some time to talk about the staffing and the instructional services in this plan, as well as the focus on curriculum and instruction, professional development, and then we'll conclude with Ed Crane, our Director of Technology, sharing with you how this plan, quite frankly, supports phase 2 of our technology plan. And then the way we've designed tonight, we hope to have a good opportunity at the end to really engage the audience in our conversation. But I think what might be helpful with the board as we kind of go along, you have questions to try to clarify, better understand, please don't hesitate, because this is your workshop for us really to interact with you. So having said that, I think what's important to keep in mind is that this process is extremely fluid. We're building a budget 18 months in advance. And I think this is perhaps the biggest challenge anytime you're really looking at a financial plan. Just to kind of give you a sense of that, Phil and I met on Tuesday with Dan Stewart and Rudy Beers to really talk through the liability protection, those insurances for our district. Because that's one of many collaborative efforts that we have with the town. So we have some numbers within this budget that Phil's going to talk about, but we haven't completed that work. Just this morning, Jay Miner, Phil, and I met with representatives from a solar energy company because we are looking at, is there opportunities for us to add solar energy to our facilities in this district to continue to reduce costs? So there are some things that we're working on that we still haven't brought closure to. The other piece is that you have to have a starting point. And so as you look at this budget, we really have a cutoff point when we're thinking about enrollment, when we're thinking about special education, of October 1st. You have to start from somewhere. So what's really important is the March and the May data points. When we get to the Board of Finance in March, we may have additional information to share. My hope is that it's not additional expenditures, but it's only areas that maybe we can save a few more dollars. The other piece, as we get together with the RTM in May, we may have even more information. So what's important to keep in mind, this is a fluid process. You may have picked up on some errors or typos within the budget book. This is our workshop so that we can really identify those. So it truly is a fluid process. So what's guiding us in this financial plan are really these 5 general areas. It's really excellence. We continue to push ourselves to say, so how does this support the culture of high expectations and excellence within our school system?
how can we get better at what we're doing? And that's what continuous improvement is about. And what's critical to keep in mind, it isn't always about spending more money in order to get better at what you do. And then how can we be innovative and think a little bit differently to deliver the same service and get the same results, or quite frankly, even get better results? And we've really pushed ourselves to always ask ourselves, so is this a need or is this a want? And so I would say to you, the number of cuts that we made back when I first arrived here in order to put together a budget for 2011-12, there are a number of wants that I would like to see back in this budget. But we've been very mindful of the times, and it hasn't crossed over quite yet to a need. But there are some things that we've been able to restore and do it in a very cost-effective way. And then lastly, which really, quite frankly, is the blanket around all of this, is really how can we do this in a very responsible way. And so we've been mindful of the economy, and we've really pushed ourselves to say, is this the best bang for the buck that we can get? So to really think and to help guide us as we think about innovation, I think about this year, a person that I certainly followed throughout his career, Stephen Jobs. One of the things that I always learned from him is that creativity and being innovative doesn't have to be a big splash. It can be one of the smallest things that can really make a significant change. So when we work together as an administrative team with this budget, we pushed ourselves to say, even if we can make this small change, is there something that we could really gain from all of this big time? And so the other piece that it really pushed us was really around continuing to foster that culture of excellence within our schools. So just to highlight the process, and you've heard me say this multiple times, I don't think we ever stop developing a budget. And, one of the best parts of the summertime is that we actually have an opportunity to really explore and do some research in depth on perhaps some possibilities. So we really went at this big time during the summer and starting to get ready for the budget work that really got underway in earnest in early fall. We also have quite a bit of collaboration with the town of Waterford. We have many services that we share. We pool our talents, and we continue to do that. Quite frankly, throughout this budget, there are many things that we work hand in glove with in order to get the very best dollar that we can. And as Phil in particular talks about some of our district-wide services, they're sitting down with Rudy and Dan on a frequent basis, really talking about, so how can we do this a little bit better? What I would also say is that we've moved away from, so is the burden more on the town or more on the board? And we're really talking about one community. This is Waterford. And at the end of the day, it's the taxpayer of Waterford that's supporting both the town and the board. And I think that's really helped us think clearly. We've also pushed ourselves to be very needs-based. It's enrollment-driven. We look at our trend data. So why is this going up? What does it look like for the last 2 or 3 years? Competitive bidding. Any place that we can possibly bid to get a better price and not lose the quality we've really invested in. The other piece that we've looked at is if we need something, is there a way to reallocate or is there a way to redeploy? And so we've really prided ourselves in really looking at that needs-based bullet on that process piece. The other thing is that we have many folks who are going to be presenting between next week and this week. And these are the folks that really take charge of these areas of responsibility. And so we really value the site development of a budget. We come together as a team. We spent 2 full days just before the Thanksgiving break as a team reviewing each other's budget, pushing each other, sharing our practice, pushing ourselves to look at alternative ways. And I think that helped us greatly, as well as we said, so what's next that we need to look at? And that's the exploring the opportunities. And then lastly, the board adopted assumptions. And that becomes our rubric. That becomes our lens. How does everything in this budget measure up to the budget assumptions? So if you look at the beginning in the budget on page Roman numeral 6, here are the assumptions that this budget is built on and supports. First, we started with cost efficiency. Where can we look at containing our insurances? We know that the last 2 years, health insurance, quite frankly, has driven us nuts. I recall a year ago sitting here and bringing forward a 1% budget increase, but we had level funding for health because we were going out to bid. At the end of the day, it was just under 3%. And you'll hear tonight that I think we have that under control. So we've really looked closely at our energy, regionalization opportunities, the transportation work that we've been doing over the past year. We're also driven by the class size guidelines because at the end of the day, we're servicing the students. So what's the best education that we can provide for our kids? We know we're obligated to address the federal and state mandate. We know that some of those are fully funded, some of those are partially funded, and some of those are not funded at all, but yet we're still legally obligated. The professional development and curriculum renewal, that's our lifeline. That's the continuous improvement to move our schools forward. We've got a significant investment in technology. Last year we presented to you the next phase of our technology renewal and plan, and this year we'll be supporting year 2. Contract costs, we have legal agreements with all of our bargaining groups, and it's important that this budget reflects those agreements. I talked earlier about the strategy that we employed, needs-based and data-driven. Our special education program needs, again, a legal obligation, and the other thing that we really pushed ourselves, some of the programs and some of the needs that our students have that we might need to look externally, is there a way to do that a little bit different in district, which benefits everybody, and then at the end of the day also save some significant dollars, and I think we've been able to tackle some of that issue. The excess cost grant, and we'll spend some time when we get into tuition. We have a reduction. It's a 10% reduction. What that means is we're absorbing over $105,000 of special education reimbursement that if it was a different year we'd be eligible for, but because it's been capped at 70%, that's the max. The last item is a false assumption. When we passed and really looked at those assumptions, we said that we would build this budget with all grants at current levels of funding. Well, since we did that, we've learned that's a reduction of 10% as well. So things that grants have supported in the past will no longer. And if we feel they're valuable, we've absorbed the costs within our budget. So that's what's really driving this fiscal plan. If you take a look at page 1 in the introduction, what I tried to do was present a pretty succinct and clear summary of where we see some of the increases. So when you're looking at the certified salaries in respect to our collective bargaining agreements, that dollar amount up there, it represents a 1.98% increase in salaries. If you also recall, 2 years ago when we were looking at a budget, we were looking at a $1.6 million increase in the salary line. That's a significant change due to the collective bargaining that we've done in the past 2 years. Reflected in that 569 is also some additional staff that Craig will talk about in his presentation. Tuition, that is a result of the excess cost grant being reduced from 80 to 70. It's also due to magnet school tuition that's been increased, as well as we have some special education needs. We have an obligation for students between 18 and 21 if they really require some transitional program needs, and we have some students in this upcoming budget that we didn't have a year ago that have hit that age of 18 that we're going to be obligated for some support services. The sick leave payout and that's all related to collective bargaining agreement. Although electricity is an increase, and it's much less, and Phil will go into greater detail on this, it's much less than we would have projected if we hadn't done the bid process that we went through to really lock in our electrical rates. But that's also due to the opening of the new high school with geothermal. But we're also going to see a direct benefit of that in just a minute in some of the decreases associated with that. The other purchase services, Bill will be talking about a time and attendance program that we're in collaboration with the town on, so we're looking at unifying along with the town. The liability insurance is something that with the new high school, we have an asset of greater value, and we've also coming off a 3-year lock-in with those insurances, and Phil will go in a little bit more detail there. FICA, that really reflects the salaries. Library books. If you recall, for the past 5 years, we've been locked in, is it 450? 750 at each school. We've increased that to 5,000 at each of the elementary schools. The time is now to address that, and we have. The natural gas, although that's an increase, we're expanding the use of natural gas at the renovated part of the high school, which will save us some dollars. And then you see some minor increases in the bottom. These are the decreases to the budget. And back in November, Ron Melnick and I attended a Board of Finance meeting, and we talked about that we'd be able to, through our collective bargaining agreements, the institution of an HSA, as well as some education of our employees, we could reduce the health care account right now at $550. And so we're intending to return that money to the town. This budget has a 12% increase. It's a projected increase. It's the worst case scenario at 12%. And it still saves, in comparison to this past year, of $354,000, and it's really due to the work that we've done around that issue. Student transportation. Bill will go into a little bit more detail on this. The bidding that we did last year has really come home to benefit us, as well as some of the work that we've done to work out some special education, bidding, and work with our neighbors in transporting our students. With the opening of the new high school, we will be reducing our dependence on heating oil by $118,000. So we have an increase in electricity and a decrease in fuel oil, but look at the difference, 56 in electricity, 118 in heating oil, so we have a savings there in energy. We anticipate a reduction in unemployment. We're working our way to the bottom of our reduction in force list from a couple of years ago. We have 8 retirements, so hopefully we're going to see some savings here in the unemployment area. The professional technical services, the maintenance repairs, the diesel fuel, and Phil will talk a little bit about that. Every penny there is going to help us in reducing this budget. So, when I share that quote about no matter how small, it really can have a significant benefit. So that's important to keep in mind. You'll also notice in the budget many of the lines are level or flat, or they're reduced. So here's the big picture, and it's in your book. If you take a look at page 6, you can see how the pie is sliced. And so we're a service organization, we're people-driven, and so the biggest slice relates to people and salaries, and that's your certified staff with instructional services, your support staff, along with your employee benefits. That's roughly 79.24% of the budget. If you just look over to the left, the dues and fees, the equipment, the textbooks, and the instructional supplies, that all adds up to 2.5% of the entire budget. I would say to you that that's really the area where we really have some discretion. The other areas are pretty fixed. We're dealing with contracts, we're dealing with services that are locked in, fuel rates, electrical rates, things like that. So that's important to keep in mind. But that gives you the big picture. So what are the drivers? What are the factors? And I'm going to highlight them from both a positive and a negative way, because many of the factors here are quite positive. The excess costs, we're going to lose some revenue. And those are services that we need, so we need to absorb that within our budget. The tuition increases, we need to absorb that. As we talk that through, we have a legal obligation. The state of Connecticut is a choice state. Students can opt to attend a variety of schools, and we're legally obligated to pay that tuition. I would say our contractual obligations are a plus in all of this. They're under 2% across the board. The operations related to FICA, insurance, and utilities, we've really worked hard to get those under control. The health care is a reduction. The fuel oil is a reduction. Supplies and equipment. At least for this coming year, in opening the new high school, we have a significant benefit. We have a warranty, so you're going to notice a number of the repair accounts that we've decreased. But I just want to say to us, a year from now, we'll need to restore that in order to make sure we have funds available to do some repair. And student transportation. You will also see a decrease in the student transportation account. The focus on continuous improvement. So what is it in this budget that really is going to take us to the next level? Craig will be talking about, with renewal, we're looking at the history and social studies curriculum as well as the art. We also need to budget for the purchase of the resources for those areas, and also upgrading our elementary libraries. That's also part of the textbook library account. Earlier in the fall, we talked about the implementation of the Common Core, the new testing that will occur across the country, and the importance of the shift in the teaching of language arts and math in particular, in the area of writing. And so we've built into this budget the support for our staff to really build the instructional capacity with mathematics, and Craig will go into detail there. We're also proposing an additional school counselor at the middle school level, and that would be important. And we'll talk a little bit more about that because we're looking at 650 students with 2 counselors right now. You do the math, that's not a great ratio. That was also an area that we cut back in 2010-11, and it's time to restore that position. So early on, I talked about the fluid process. Here are the areas that we're still exploring. East Lyme, along with Waterford, have really been the drivers in trying to organize the region into a health cooperative. Right now, Anthem is pricing out 7 or 8 communities that are serious about this cooperative, and we're one of them. If we see this being a financial benefit, we'll come back to revise the line item that we have within our budget. But right now, we're looking at an additional year at fully insured with an increase projected at no higher than 12%. So we have the worst case scenario presented in this budget. In district special education programs, we're continually exploring ways when our students require additional services, rather than looking elsewhere, is there a way that we can do some things here within Waterford, and we'll be highlighting a couple of those opportunities that we have built into the budget, as well as continuing to get at the cost of special ed transportation as we transport our students to other school sites. I've kidded frequently on regional transportation. I feel like it's trying to get the Middle East together to have a peace settlement, and so we're working closely with our neighbors. I'm not willing to give up just yet. I think we're able to perhaps pull together around some of the transportation related to vocational technical schools. Maybe we are working with East Lyme and New London, and so we just need to resolve a couple of issues there. We're looking at continuing to explore the opportunity to rebid our electricity rates, so we'll highlight that. We're watching the market on oil on a daily basis. And as long as it continues to get mild, Phil, I think we're going to see prices drop. And when that happens, we're looking to lock in. And we may save a little bit of money there. As I said earlier, we're working with the town on bidding the liability insurance, and we're very serious about this. Coming out of our meeting today, we see some real opportunities here for perhaps some solar energy with our schools, which down the road could really save us a few dollars. Here are the areas that we're containing costs within the budget. So if you take a look at Roman numeral 3 at the very beginning, as we talk about the staffing plan, we have redeployed and reallocated staff. We have reduced 2 staff positions at the high school. We've put them into some hot spots, the FTEs, as well as enhancing the instructional program, and Craig will talk about that. We've renegotiated the labor contracts as well as the benefit packages, and it's helped us contain costs. The student transportation, the electricity, the regional cooperative opportunities. When Ed tonight talks about the investment that this community has made in fiber optics, you're going to be amazed at what we used to pay just 5 years ago and what we're budgeting for this coming year. It really has been a very wise investment. The in-district special education program, we're instituting an autism program here within the Waterford Public Schools, and we're putting that in place now, and that will have an impact into this budget. But the impact is to save dollars while we're providing support to our students in need. We're also servicing students with special education needs at some of our area magnet schools. We're working hard to try to expand that, but at least we have that in place in 2 of our magnet schools. The iPad, the iPod, the Kindle, 3 great inventions. When you talk about innovation, they couldn't be better. They have cut down our costs for assistive technology, and they have proven to be great educational tools and highly motivating for our kids. We've reduced our advertising costs, and we've monitored the overtime. So as you reflect on this financial plan through the next 2 meetings, really looking at what we have and what we've put into this budget to support, it's really being driven by the need to continue to foster and develop the excellence that we have within our schools, that we need to be supportive of the innovation that we've put forward in this budget, as well as being mindful. So when you look at this 1.51% increase, and thinking about the drivers that I've highlighted, there's an increase of 1.51%. Take away the tuition increase. This is a budget that's reflective of just over 0.5%. We've had a challenge, and I think we've really risen to the occasion to really address the issues that we have around financing a high-quality program. And I think before I pass the mouse over to Phil to highlight the district-wide expenses, I think one of the things that I'd really like to close with is just keep in mind that this is a financial plan that's really based on strategic thinking to really move our district forward and to contain and reduce costs wherever we can. This is the big picture of this financial plan, and as we work through the workshops over the next 2 nights, we welcome your questions. We welcome your suggestions. We also want you to push our thinking, because if there's some ways to save a few more dollars, we're up for it. So, as I introduce Phil Russell, who's serving as our interim business manager, this is kind of, Phil, a coming home party tonight. Phil was here in Waterford. Phil is now retired, but he's been called out of retirement to work alongside of us. And Phil was a school business official here in Waterford back in the early to mid-'80s, right, Phil?
82 to 85. Yeah.
So, Phil, welcome home.
Thank you. It's been 28 years since I've made a presentation to the Waterford Board of Ed. So I hope I can do as well as I did back then, or I think I did back then. The district-wide services accounts are those that are budgeted, spent, and controlled by the business office under the direction of the superintendent of schools. The total of these 8 categories, and I'm not talking about the bottom one of revenue because that's not an expenditure account, but the 8 categories you see there represent over $13 million of our $44 million budget, or 30% of the overall budget. So this is nearly a third of the budget. These accounts are fixed generally in nature. In other words, a kilowatt hour cost a kilowatt hour. It's the same cost. The cost of an employee benefit for a single person is the same. But even though they're fixed, there are ways that we can do cost reductions by looking out of the box and analyzing each one of these expenditures. This administration has spent the last couple of years working on this core of expenditures. Overall, there's in this particular budget, there's a $414,000 drop or decrease in the budget as a result of this third of the budget. You're going to click it. Okay. Health insurance. To give you a perspective, salaries is $27 million of the budget. Employee benefits is $6.6 million of the budget. This is the second largest expense in our budget. The next 3 after that are transportation at $2.5 million, tuition at $2 million, and utilities at $1.2 million. So to give you an idea, it drops off pretty fast. The health insurance, so this is probably the greatest success this year that we've had in reduction of costs. We've had negotiations with 3 labor groups, unions, that have helped us severely drop the cost of health insurance in our budget. We saved over $115,000 by redesigning the plan for our 2 support groups, and we saved another $209,000 by the redesign of the health insurance plans for our teachers. It should not go unnoticed that they cooperated, and we had a very joint partnership in these cost reductions. The additional value not measured here is that we were able to accomplish this without a lot of give-backs from the administration. So, the cumulative effect of this $325,000 that we saved is that over a 5-year period, it's $1.6 million. So when you think of all the cost reductions that I'm going to go over tonight, you know, we think about long-term savings, and over a long period of time, there's tremendous opportunity to take these funds and redirect them into the educational process, the educational part of the budget. Oh, and as a future cost reduction, I just want to bring this up. Even though this does not affect the current budget, part of the negotiations as a future cost reduction, the health insurance retirement incentive for teachers will be phased out, and teachers hired this year will not have that benefit at all when they retire. So the only benefit that we would have this year for taxpayers is the fact that when the actuaries do their work, the cost of OPEB, other post-employment benefits, which we're required to put annual contributions in, that is lowered. So the ARC, as they call it, the annual required contribution, is going to be less that we'll have to put in. Social Security is based on the liability. The support staff, we have to match 7.65% of their pay. Teachers, we have to match 1.45%, which is the cost of Medicare. Yes, you can turn. Ding. How's that? Reimbursement is based on collective bargaining agreements. This is tuition reimbursement. There's $60,000 in the collective bargaining agreement for teachers, and we have another $10,000 for other staff. In the unemployment department, we really expect a reduced budget in this category for two reasons. The first reason is that we don't expect layoffs this year, and the second one is that our recall list is really been significantly reduced. So we won't have those unemployment or extended employment benefits that the federal government has voted in. Employee benefits. The trending data indicates that a small increase in workers' compensation expense is going to be here. We budgeted, as you can see on the bottom of the slide, we budgeted a 2% increase. We just learned last week that it's going to be a 3% increase. That's only $2,700 that we're going to be short. So we're actually short in the budget because we've learned some additional information in that area. Unused sick leave is a third area of the budget that we've realized cost reductions. Now, although, again, this is not reflected in our budget, but again, that affects the contribution that's required for OPEB, the annual required contribution that the town has to make. That's the third area. Retirement incentive, that's the fourth area in the budget, or at least the items that I'm going to be talking about today, is the fourth area that we've had cost reductions. We've been successful in reducing that from $5,000 to $3,000. This is an incentive given to teachers when they announce their retirement on December 1st. What that helps us do is it helps us calculate turnover and reduce our budget this year so that we don't carry that turnover into next year. It also lets us extend our recruiting period so that when we're trying to recruit people, if we know early, we can get the cream of the crop over other districts. Next. Our legal expense has been reduced to 2.52%. That's a small increase, but this account covers the cost of one union contract next year, which is the administrators. It also sets aside funds for special ed hearings, litigation, recording expenses, expulsions, policy review and updates, personnel grievances, legal advice and representation at state labor board hearings. The Visiting Nurses Association, we've had negotiations with them which have resulted in a very nice 1.96% increase. Next. Transportation, this is the second year of our new contract with STA. We're very happy with the cost decrease last year, and this year the contract stipulates a 3% increase. That's in the contract document. The special ed transportation is the fifth area that I'm going to be talking about where we are going to have cost reductions in this budget. The difference this year is we are planning on bidding out the cost of our outplaced students. This has not been done before. This is something that Jerry alerted me to this fall, and we feel that instead of having the one contractor that we use for out-of-district placements, that we will generate a bid list, go out to bid, and we expect a tremendous savings in this account. The magnet school, this is only our share of the cost of magnet school transportation. You'll notice when we go over the revenues that we have a significant amount of reimbursement by the state of Connecticut. The $17,000 is the only share that we have to pay for. Diesel fuel. When we bid out student transportation services a couple years ago, we stipulated that we wanted new energy-efficient diesel engines. And the reason for this is we wanted to save money on gas. That strategy worked out really well. Our new buses, even though this may sound low to you, get 6.98 miles per gallon. That's a lot higher than the 5 to 5.5 miles per gallon that we used to get with the old Type 1 buses. And not only that, but we increased the number of kids that can ride in the buses because they're a little bit bigger. So it was a win-win, and this budget is expected to go down, even though we have a 12-cent increase in the budget projected for diesel fuel. The next slide, I haven't been telling them the pages, but pages, let me at least go ahead. Pages 37 to 39. Insurance. This is the one part of our budget that is up double digits. You can see that. There's a couple reasons for that. First, the replacement cost of the new high school and the replacement cost of all the equipment, furniture, fixtures, and equipment is significant, and that raised our property insurance. Our liability insurance, unfortunately, our town and Board of Ed, because this is a cooperative arrangement with the town, between the town and Board of Ed, we've had a loss to premium ratio that's been very high, and that's going to result in an increase in our liability insurance. And the same thing with interscholastic insurance. We've had a couple of claims that are going to raise the premiums. These are two small accounts, but postage, the cost of postage just went up last week, actually, or earlier this week. I don't know, it was just announced. However, we continue to transition into electronic communication, and we see this over the next couple of years lowering more and more. Likewise, the advertising account continues to fall as we rely on School Spring and other forms of advertising electronically. District travel. You may have noticed in the budget that this went up in last year's budget. The IRS rates went from 50 cents to 55.5 cents. We have accordingly brought our budget up, but we're bringing it down again because our experience is allowing, even though the rate actually went up another cent to 56.5, we feel we can, our experience is that we can reduce this account. Utilities. You might have, earlier I said that the largest parts of our budget were salaries, benefits, transportation, tuition, and then this was the fifth largest part of our budget. But even though it was the fifth largest part of our budget, in most other school systems that I've been in, this has been the third largest. This has been the largest item in the budget after health insurance. This town has got to be proud of what they've done. You know, this geothermal and the combination of getting out of fossil fuel, the high cost of fossil fuel, and the good work that the maintenance department has done has kept these utilities down. Did you want to say? Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the contracted services. Especially back on 52, 54, contracted services, I missed that. There is a new account on the bottom of page 53 or 54. It's one of those. On the bottom of page 54, you will see a new account. It's 11610, and it has $40,300 in it. This is for the new a new time and attendance system. This is a joint project that we're looking at with the Board of with the town. This project will provide the town and the board with more efficient time and attendance processing, increased accuracy, reduced disputes, and free up time for the business office to more productively be proactive toward cost analysis and reduction, which is what we've been doing lately. Utilities. Right. I'm going to be, the next natural gas, I'm going to try the next slide after this, but not yet, but we're going to be talking about all the utilities together because Waterford Public Schools has changed how we use utilities in the buildings. We used to be almost 90% heated by fossil fuels. Now all of a sudden we've changed and transferred that to electricity because of geothermal. The same thing is happening this year with the high school. The high school is going to have over half of the high school is going to be eliminating the use of oil. That's the old building, and we're going to be using geothermal, which is going to increase our electric bill. So you'll see, you saw in that last slide, that our electricity went up and our oil is going down. The only building that we have left on oil is going to be Clark Lane, which is still substantial. Natural gas, that account, what page are we on? I'm sorry, page 60 to 65. And on page 64, you will see that natural gas is up. But the reason why that is up is because, again, we're changing out the old gymnasium and the old auditorium were heated by fuel, oil. And we've converted, because of the low cost of natural gas, we are converting that. We have combination burners that we can change out that. It's going to be a significant savings to us. But the loss of the oil and the increase in the natural gas still shows a positive cost reduction for the Board of Ed's budget. The next slide also refers to 62 to 64. the overall decrease, with all the changes that we're doing with oil, natural gas, and everything else, the overall decrease is only $43,048, but with the increases in some of the rates of these utilities, that's even a bigger savings for the Board of Education. So that's all the utility accounts are down 3.2%. However, the superintendent of schools, Jerry has asked me to look into the energy efficiency of our schools on a square foot basis. So we did some research. This includes all utilities, including water, sewer, and the basic utilities you're familiar with. If you look at this, you'll see that most of the schools have now settled into a nice $3 to $3.04, $3.05. Oswegatchie is $2.89 a square foot. These are very, very good square foot numbers. And again, I've been in other school districts. These are really numbers to brag about. If you notice, Clark Lane, we're at 3.92 cents a square foot. There's room for improvement there. So we're going to be looking at that. If we can get Clark Lane down to where the other schools are, and that's a 128,000 square foot building, you're talking about over $100,000 more. That's going to be, it's a challenge because the heating system and the structure of that building is different. But we're looking into that. We just wanted to let you know that we're really focusing on trying to lower those utilities. 64. Now, when you look at these expenses, and when we look at all the utilities was $1.2 million of our budget, but electricity, which has gone up over the years as we've done geothermal, has a budget of $933,000. That's 3/4 of the cost of all our utilities. So Jerry's asked me again, this is the focus that we want to do, is focus on electricity and try to reduce those costs even further. And there's two ways that we're looking to do this. One, as you know, or you may know, and again the public is here, we bid out electricity and locked in on a very low rate, 7.65 cents a kilowatt hour. However, the cost of natural gas is still going down, and Wall Street Journal and a lot of the people in New York are saying that we're going to have natural gas prices going down for until 2016. So there's a real good opportunity to take a lock-in that we did and lock in further out. As we go out, we're going to lock in at a lower price. Now, the consultant said, I just talked to them this morning, that it's possible that we can get down to 7 cents or 6.98 cents a kilowatt hour, and it would be worth that to do a blended rate, and that's what they call it when you have already a contract and you want to extend it with a blended rate. The other area, and I'm going to let Jerry talk about it, is solar. Did you want to mention something about it?
I think, just to reiterate what I said at the beginning, and I think we left this morning's meeting, Jay, thinking pretty positive about it. We've been working with a company since early last spring, and Jay's had the opportunity to take them to each of our sites. They came back with really an outline on some possibilities, and there's some grant funding now, and what we've learned is there's no cost to us. We don't own it. They maintain it, they take care of all of it, and that at the end of the day there's a reduction in our costs for electricity. And so we're going to continue to explore it, and I thought we had a very productive meeting this morning. So that's an area that we're going to continue to explore. And it might be a way eventually to get at some of that Clark Lane cost.
Yeah. The next item is operating capital plan. This is simply the replacement of our copiers. This has been level funded for years.
Well, I wonder if maybe it might be helpful, because as Bill talked about, that's 30% of the budget right there. If maybe we pause and get any questions that you have around all of this, because we've invested a great deal of work into this to really drop down the cost so we can hold on to the program. So questions that you might have before we talk about the revenue.
I said that it's a lot to absorb, to go on to the next, but thank you for your thorough explanation. We appreciate it. And at this time, the board will open questions. John first.
Attorney, could you expand on the regional corporate health insurance initiative? You mentioned that it is out for bid. Which towns? What's the time frame? How might that affect this budget?
We started, I want to say I think soon after I was hired, where we got together in our Learn Rest area and started to have these conversations, and different consultants came in to meet with, and going hand in hand with the insurance committee that was established here in the town. So Dan and I have continued on through the process, and I guess what I would say, I would name one of the towns, and that's East Lyme. The other towns right now I'm not at liberty to say out publicly. And so Anthem is our current carrier. Anthem would continue to be the carrier with a cooperative. And so working with consultants, they now have all of our insurance data in the hands of Anthem, really looking at what the pricing might be with the 7 or 8 towns going in on all of this. And so we want to compare that. It's the exact same design of plan, it's the same carrier, there's no difference in coverage, but where we may save some significant dollars is in the administrative costs initially, which would drop down the dollar amount that you have within our budget right now. If it proves not to be a good thing, then we would stay with where we are, and what we've presented to you in this budget is our worst case scenario. It may be a little bit less, we can't tell you just yet. It's early on in the process. We've only been 6 months into the new year regarding our health trends. The good news is our costs are down, so that's why I think we've got a decent rate in comparison to the last 2 years. We hope to have within the next 2 to 3 weeks some costs to do some comparison, some numbers to compare.
Okay, the 7 or 8 towns, they're not all with Anthem right now. So the cost reductions or savings that we would anticipate would be the fact that Anthem would have a larger group,
right,
and the efficiencies would be on their administrative costs, which would result in a lower rate. And so this would be transparent.
Very transparent.
Let's see. Next, if you could expand on, yes?
Could we wait if you're going to go on just for one moment, because I had the
Health
same
insurance?
question with health insurance that John did, and I remember at one of the meetings we had said that because there is some time constraint with this, if we're going to look at it, would we have an idea if they signed, we talked about perhaps just a letter of intent
Right.
that wasn't legally binding, if we could know, is that still being discussed?
Well, you know what's been great is we've involved our legal counsel in this as well as our consultant. We work with Lindbergh and Ripple, and they've been right at the table really kind of acting as our agent, advising us whether this is positive or negative.
But do we have a specific time that we need to know for this year, if that's going to impact this?
I would say by the end of March.
By March?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, John. Go ahead.
So, all right, so they might bid based on 7 or 8 towns, and then 3 or 4 towns might back out, and then you might have to go back and
It might.
we might be one of the ones that back
We
out.
might be one of the ones that backs out.
Okay, so it's,
You did a good job.
okay, so it could be,
But we have nothing to lose.
Right. Did you
although
have,
we talk the end of March, it could be
Could be sooner.
sooner, could be longer, depending on the iterations that we have to go through.
Right.
okay.
Okay, the next question is about the special education transportation. I'm not sure I understood what you said you were planning to do. You said breaking out There's, sorry.
There are two areas that we're looking at. One, regional transportation. Probably Jerry's been talking about that for 2 years that he's been here. There's an opportunity for us to take some of those kids that are from, say, East Lyme and other towns and combine them on the same buses, like, for instance, when we go to the tech school in Norwich. There's definitely some savings. I've already made some arrangements or set up a meeting with the people from East Lyme. That's our most logical spot because we both have feeder roads that go right to the highway. The biggest cost savings, however, will be, and I know it from my other school districts, we've not bid this out in the past. We have one carrier that does it out of district work. I've already had 3 other carriers that are interested in bidding, so I already know just the fact that we're bidding, even if the people that we are doing business with now go into the bid process, we'll get lower prices. And based on what I've seen for prices, I think that it's going to be significant. And we've built that into the budget, so if we don't do it, we're not going to see those budget. So we're definitely going to get into that.
Okay, now the contract that we have with Cooper Transportation includes that.
No.
So what we have right now with STA is our large, what we call Type 1, so the big buses, and our smaller buses, the Type 2. What Bill is talking about is for our special education students who are out-of-districtly placed, we contract with a vendor to do like little vans or little cars.
That's a separate contract.
And that would be a separate contract, and that's something we haven't did in the past that we really still thinks that we can harvest some savings by bidding that out.
We haven't bid that out?
We've been keeping the same carrier for a number of years, and so it's about time to just go out to bid and see if there are other carriers who may be interested to compete for that business.
And there's a benefit to having one carrier because they know our kids and everything else, but there's a lot of carriers out there that are in that business, and they know how to deal with the types of children that we're sending out. And these children are going all over the state, and we have some that go as far as Manchester, Bridgeport, because of the facilities, the types of facilities they have to go to.
Yep.
Okay. You have more?
A couple more.
Yep. Oh, you're answering some of mine.
The time and attendance system.
Yeah, you did.
I have that
Can you
one
explain
too.
what?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I know what that is, but if you could explain what maybe they don't.
Well, it's what we used to call a time clock system where you punched manually cards, but now it's all electronic.
Swipe.
Yeah, there's features where you could use biometrics. We haven't decided what we're going to do. Biometrics is the most efficient. You put your finger in there, it knows who you are. You don't have to put in any codes, but we also have the ability to have cards read it. What it does is it automatically feeds into your payroll system, and again, it's very efficient. It also has an employee, what we call a time and attendance, where an employee can request time off, and there's not all that paperwork that goes all throughout, to the principal's office, the secretary to the principal, to the business office, and then finally entered into the computer. It's just all automatic. And
So we had we'll flip back to the right page. So it was about $40,000. Upfront.
That'd be our share
to implement the system. And there are no recurring costs.
There is an annual fee.
there is,
A license for software or
Yeah.
yes, it's all the companies have changed over where they used to have, you could buy the units, the punch clocks, you could, buy the software, and then all you had to do is a smaller fee. Now they've changed that. All the companies are doing web-based stuff, and the annual fee is a lot higher. Probably by design, but it's it's the way all the companies have gone. So.
Okay, so this is a town-wide initiative.
It is.
So the $40,000 is for the
Sure.
The annual recurring costs, again, we would bear just the Board of Ed's share of that, and that's based
Right.
on per capita.
Right, they would set us up as two different entities. We're investigating it together, the town and the Board of Ed. However, we would be set up as two different entities because of the major differences between the way we pay versus the way they pay, the way we, all our contracts are.
Okay. Next question is solar. You're looking at perhaps school-based solar systems. I would like to think that the town would look at another town-wide initiative of a solar farm. We have I can think of one site right now, the dump, the landfill, which will never have anything on it. It will never be used for anything. Could be a very good site for a solar farm that could then serve the entire town. Is anybody looking at that? Okay. So looking at
Again, we're early in the process, and so one of the keys that we needed to do was really have a walk through all of our facilities, really have an audit, and we have some real opportunities here.
Okay.
If I can just follow up with John's comment, because I know this was an initiative that the board looked at before in the past, the solar, and part of the reason we didn't go forward at that time was the cost was prohibitive and the payback was so long-term.
Very different today.
So we had said now that it's different, and we think there's grant monies available, that it won't be any cost to the district, so it makes a good situation to investigate. And your idea with we'll hear more about that, I'm sure, at some other point, but that's good. I have a few questions, but I'm going to wait and ask the board other questions or concerns on this part of the budget. Kevin?
I just have one. How many students are we looking at when we talk about tuition for out-of-state, out-of-district?
There's 34 students. They go to private and public placed institutions.
I guess my concern is going to be,
Schools.
at what point do we say, who's regulating those costs? At what point is it becoming more expensive to us, educating students, in, let's say, magnet schools and what
We're actually, in just a few minutes, we're actually going to talk the board through, because you're looking at a $2 million expenditure in this budget around tuition, so what we want to do is really break it out. So I think we can get at your question at that time. We'll make sure we get at it.
Then my only other question is, when we talk about solar energy, everything I've read, the Northeast is, I'm sure you've done a lot of homework on this, but the Northeast is not necessarily considered to be good candidates for solar energy because of the light hours.
The winter?
Hours that we have. I don't know how else to put it.
I can talk about Milford.
Does that become more of a fallacy because of the systems that are developed today, or what? And then the cost effective, I guess. The technology of solar panels is angled.
So different.
Panels have a much wider receiving angle, and they're far more. That's what we're looking at nowadays. There's just like LED lights come so far in the last 10 years. When we started looking at school projects, they didn't have the efficiencies or the returns that we have now. And the funding that you get for the grants and whatnot, all said that.
I came from Milford. I retired out of the Milford Public School System. We put over 840 panels up on our high school, and it didn't cost us a penny. It was a PPA, which is called a Purchase Power Agreement, and it works. It works very good. The new panels have like a convex, all these mini convex mirrors that concentrate the light now, and it doesn't matter if you got a convex mirror. It doesn't matter if the sun is here or if it's over here, because they're all parabolic and it just concentrates the light. It's really fascinating, but you don't have to have the angles anymore.
You got Tim down the end?
Oh, excuse me, I was listening
Along
to...
the same line, my understanding is that now the equipment will be owned and maintained by the outfits
You're right.
that are generating the electricity for us, and we're just going to benefit from the reduced
That's correct.
cost of electricity to us.
Yep.
Not only that, but they insure for loss, theft, damage. If something breaks, they have to replace it.
It's a big upfront cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to point out to you, that's not reflected in this budget. It's an area that we're working on, and I think it's important for you to be aware that we started the exploration last spring, and we're continuing through with it.
Jody? Yes.
Similar to what's going to cost as long as you do the census school, is it the same type of program, or is it sounds even better than
Yeah, it's better. It's better, and quite frankly, he started the conversation with us. And so, we've looked at a number of opportunities, so.
Are we looking into maybe doing something in the census school and the community center too?
Not at this time. Yep.
David?
Go back to the healthcare property.
Yep.
7-8 towns may or may not be involved. What would motivate them not to be involved? Why wouldn't they realize they
That their rates right now are cheaper than the co-op. So that they may be in a great situation, they may have a significant internal service fund, and their rates are very low. But I don't think we really have anybody like that right now in our co-op. We're pretty similar.
Tim?
Just a question about the insurance, liability insurance. The insurance increases due to the new building fairly easily to understand. It's a little vague about, sounded like maybe that's some bad luck. And we made some significant claims, and that's going to drive our rate.
It is.
That's basically the understanding.
Yeah, our loss to claim ratio is significant. You probably remember a lot of things that I don't in the newspapers that have happened, and some of those have come to roost for us for future premiums. Without getting into any specifics.
So I just had one, under the contracted services, you didn't mention and it may fall under instructional service, the shared teachers with Groton, with the,
that'll be discussed.
Well, we'll go into the and do it under special ed? Okay, so you kept it out of the
Yeah,
contract. Okay, good.
I only discussed 2 out of those 10 or 12.
Right, I saw
accounts.
that. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions on this aspect for the board? Okay, we can move on then.
So we're going to ask you to turn to page 8990 in the budget there. It gives you an opportunity to see where we are revenue-wise.
Thank you for remembering that.
And this is an important thing to keep in mind, because bottom line is we're looking at less revenue.
Right. We have 3 sources of revenue that come into the town or Board of Ed. We don't have a lot of money that's supported by the federal and state government. You could see the dollars and say that's a lot of money, but only 2% of what we do in Waterford is supported by federal funds, and the largest 2 grants there, if you look, are Title I and IDEA B of $261,000 and $542,000. That makes up 90% of what the federal government gives us, but that represents only about 2% of what we do. The state gives us about 2.25% of what we do, and that comes in the form mostly of excess cost, and magnet school transportation reimbursement. Those two make up 90% of the 2.25%. But there's another factor. The second paragraph you see there, it says revenue to the town. That $1,563,000 does not come to us. It goes to the town, and that helps reduce our budget impact to the taxpayer by 3.5%. So the taxpayer is the town is allowed to take that and offset the cost of the education process. The resulting 95% comes from our request to the Board of Finance and the RTM. As you can see, and you can stay on that page 90, our revenue has decreased $168,000. We're talking about that top revenue summary. Now, do we have that? Yeah. All right, good. It's $168,000. A large part of this decrease is the excess cost, and we're estimating only 70%, and that's about $105,418 of that decrease. If you added in the decrease in Title I and open choice, you would come to almost 95% of that $168,000 decrease. The funding derives from federal, state, and local sources. Some of the federal and state funding is earmarked for mandates, things that we have to do under Idea B and Title I, and I guess you guys could speak to it if somebody had a question better than I could.
Yep.
And then community use of schools gives us revenue that offsets the budget per town agreement. In the back, on page 92 and 93, you will see a glossary of descriptions of the various grants that we get. Okay, tuition. Tuition is the fourth largest budget category. I hate to say that. I mean, I just want to keep your perspective. At $2,003,000.
So if you could go back to page 42 for a minute. What we've done is give you really an overview as to, 43, here are the various sites that help educate the students here in Waterford. And then as you get over to page 48, you have this all on a single page. So one of the things that we want to do is really take you through this page, and Phil's broken it into 4 categories.
Right. The page 48 is a little bit, it's arranged differently. I think the way we arranged it might help you better. So we arranged the 4 categories of the Friendship School, magnet / choice, out-of-district placements, and other tuition costs. The Friendship School is responsible for $414,000 of our $2 million increase in the, of the $1.5 million budget that we're asking for.
So if you think about this, we're anticipating a 2% increase in tuition, and this is for our students ages 3, 4, and 5, and it's approximately 250 students. And then we also have a special education component, and this is the Child Find with pre-K students. So this is a service that we've been providing here in Waterford.
And that's the first 2 items on page 48.
Do you still have teachers at the Friendship School that we
Yes.
that are on our
We still have 2.
Two.
Okay. The next slide goes over all of the magnet schools that we have students that have elected to go to. I think there's 115 students. And, I don't know, do you want to mention?
Yeah, if I could talk to this. So, Kevin, maybe in thinking about your question. So, our students have options. Elementary, middle, high. Elementary is the regional magnet, as well as kindergarten with the Friendship School. Then you have the dual language school for some of our middle school students. And then there's some high school options. And, we're talking just over 100 students here. And there's no cap. There's no cap. X number of students who choose to be educated in any of these schools, we have a legal obligation of providing the tuition cost. And so, as you look up here, there are two that are new to us. One is the Winthrop STEM program for elementary students, and then you have the middle college high school. How did we find out about it? When we received a tuition bill and 3 of our students were attending. And there was a time that with all of these magnets, there was conversation at the local board levels, and then board approval that students could attend. But I will tell you, we've spent a great deal of time on this trying to figure out, are there some ways that we can work around this? And we were told pretty directly on Tuesday that this is part of the legislation, so it's a mandate. Our students have the option as part of the Chef O'Neill, and so in just looking at this, this is the obligation. The other piece is that our magnet schools can also raise tuition. And we are members of the governing board, so we will make sure on the tuition discussion date that we're physically present to have that conversation. And so these are the real costs that you see associated with students that participate in magnet and choice.
We can't, as a board, put a cap on the number of students we're going to pay for to go there?
No. I did have an innovative suggestion, and that was it, but I was told that's illegal.
He's always trying to lower costs, Jimmy.
In one point, though, we should point out, one of the schools, the Regional Multicultural Magnet School, we do benefit in the sense that we have extra students going there at no cost, but in general...
I think the other thing to kind of keep in mind, and I want to be careful in the way I talk about this isn't picking on the magnet schools at all. But I think it's just helping to understand. Today, Kathleen and I attended a legislative breakfast, and I got up to speak about this with all the legislators, and I said, usually I'm pretty good about staying ahead of the curve and seeing what's coming. This is the biggest surprise in this budget. They just did not see this coming whatsoever. And so there's some significant rate increases. There are some decreases as well, but the decreases are due to we're projecting fewer students attending some of those schools. We also handle the transportation, and quite frankly, as we did some further investigation on the grant possibilities, the good news here for Waterford, we're taking care of most of the transportation costs. However, we have a student who may want to go to a magnet school in Wyndham. I have to tell you, we're obligated to pay tuition. We are not obligated to pay the transportation. And so we have said no around circumstances like that. So, at the end of the day, within this budget, there's a $386,000 expenditure for tuition.
So we have 150 students. Let's talk about $3,500 per student.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, what's the state going to do to kind of cap that cost or regulate that cost? In a sense that, does it become more expensive for us to educate our children out of district instead of here? And then, so what's the point? I'm missing what the point is. I mean, they can get a quality education here, yes, they have choice, but do our taxpayers want to have to pay for that?
Jody?
I just have a question. Have you gotten any interest in students wanting to come to Waterford High School because they'll be in high school?
Well, one of my predictions, I don't know if it's going to come true, is I think once we open our new high school, we'll have more students remaining here in Waterford. First of all, just namely from the technology that we're going to be able to provide in that high school. So you think of some of the options that they have, they're connected with some of the state-of-the-art technology, and our high school will be able to match that. So we've talked about how we can market that better to our 8th graders. And I think once we get that school open, we're going to have the chance to bring our students over from Clark Lane before they make high school choices to really tour and get a good sense of our new high school.
If I may, Jody, you just hit on part of our communications as the Board of Education and the new high school state-of-the-art. We have a lot to be very proud of. If you look at our CAP scores this year and you look at science, we were second in the DERG. We're doing a great deal of good work in science. I know, and that's not, as Mr. Belair said, that naturally school choice is an important choice. Parents are the first educators. They have the right to choose. But if we do a good job marketing the brand new high school, our testing scores, there may be an opportunity to attract some of the students back to our district. So I think that's the approach that we will need to take. It's just a very good community marketing of our schools and bragging a little more about our achievements, and more than staying the course, we're staying the course of excellence and moving the district forward. So
the other thing that's not here, but and Kathy will address it when she talks about the special education budget, we're also obligated for the special education costs. And if you recall last year, I shared that one of our cost-saving measures, Kathy, Craig, and I went and visited with folks at the schools saying we would like to be providing those services with our own staff because we can reduce the cost. Mm-hmm. We have 2 of those schools that have agreed to allow us to do that. So we've been able to reduce the cost. But we're also legally obligated for any of the special education or related services costs, and you'll see that in the budget. That's somewhere around $160,000. So that's a responsibility that we have. So just to try to keep that in perspective. Want to go to the next one for a minute?
Could I just ask, on the Winthrop STEM, I looked and I didn't see it, but could you just tell us what that program is? I didn't see it. Is it in the book?
So the
it is. I missed it.
Page 43.
Okay.
And it's
it was on the other side.
it's
Okay.
a specialized learning experience for science, technology, engineering, and math for the elementary grades, and that's located in New London.
In New London. Okay. Thank you. I did have it here. Sorry. Thank you, Craig.
And with regard to our outplace, all these students in choice, it represents almost 7% of our students are out, and it used to be last year it was 6.1%. So there's an increase, and it's a cost to us. They have choice, but we have no choice to pay it.
And then, if you recall, we had Bill Martin come over from the Waterford Country School to do a presentation. And so when you're looking at the out-of-district placements, you have some students that are best educated in a different school setting that are either private or public, and that's why you see the differentiation up there. And then you know what's unique to Waterford. We have students who are placed here in the shelters or the safe homes. And I think a way to kind of look at that is they're homeless. There's no nexus. And so they're placed here in Waterford, and we have a legal obligation of that placement and the costs, some of the costs associated with that. That's why you see that up there. And then you can see what our excess cost grant. So looking at the overall cost, we have some defraying of that cost. But again, keep in mind it's 70%, not 80%.
Can't they do something better for us, though, because we have a unique situation? I mean, the students are entitled to education,
right.
and I'm happy that, we can do that for them. I think the state, the DCF, has to kick in that, too. I don't think it's fair for it to fall on our shoulders.
Thank you, Jonathan.
And then the other cost is really to enhance the instructional program with Project Go, and we've had a great partnership with them. Those are for 6th grade students, as well as our students involved in marine science at the high school. Bill, did you want to add anything else to the tuition at all?
As we stated, probably more times than you wanted to hear, we're actively seeking cost reductions in this budget. We've been actively doing this, and I went over 7 areas where we've actually cut the costs or we had future costs coming. The long-term impact of these cuts, the long-term impact of anything we do where we do cost reductions is tremendous. And again, the savings for health insurance alone was $1.6 million over a 5-year period. We followed a collaborative approach with the town. Some examples are health insurance, liability insurance, workers' comp, shared services like HR and maintenance. We have a good relationship with the town, and we hope to see that continue. Next week. It's a needs-based budget, and we have data-driven trends that we look at. The overall objective is, and I stated a little bit, our goal is, and always has been, to lower operational costs so a greater emphasis goes to educational programs. And the more we can lower this, the more emphasis we can put in the educational program side.
Are there any other questions? So we'll move to the curriculum and instruction, professional and development, and Craig's going to give an overview of this section of the budget.
Okay, well, Jim passes out the PowerPoint.
Sure.
I'm going to be going over and reviewing the needs related to curriculum, professional development, and staffing. I first want to acknowledge some of the key work that this year's budget has supported. With respect to curriculum, we have been working with all of our school counselors, our guidance counselors, to come up with a comprehensive K-12 school counseling curriculum. We've been working with some very knowledgeable, highly expert statewide consultants towards that. We're also in the process of doing a renewal of our K-12 music curriculum. Both of those documents will be coming to you in the spring. With respect to professional development, as you recall, how we really utilized our fall professional development time, we immersed the 6 through 12 core teachers with some Karen Hess work, which was really tied to the Common Core. We focused really the K-12 grades or areas of language arts and math around the Common Core. This is the first year of the math adopted or implemented curriculum. So those are new materials that the teachers are using, and a lot of professional development has gone on around how to teach to that higher level. We've done significant workshops in the area of language arts on text complexity, close reading, text-dependent questions, units of study, and our presenters have been our basic skill coordinators. We're really trying to utilize in-house expertise and have our own staff really train all the teachers. And as you are fully aware, we are continuing with the regional PD offerings. I'd like to discuss the budget pages 30 to 33 and then pages 70 to 73. For the next school year, the work with respect to the curriculum will be around implementing next year the school counseling curriculum. And last month, Kelly Shannon kind of whetted your appetite towards that with the work on the student success plans. And we'll also be implementing the music curriculum, and we'll be renewing next year, beginning this summer, K-12 history and the art curriculums, with as you can see, a flat budget. I'd like to focus you on page 13 for a moment. With respect to instruction, I want to review kind of two specialized instructional support programs. We have really the summer school, and the increases that you see are contractual obligations. The in-school suspension is really the state-mandated result, where we have an in-school suspension center at the middle school and high school for students. We no longer remove students from the school for every single issue, just highly dangerous ones. And that's gone up by 2%. On pages 30 to 33 and then 52 to 54, professional development is truly one of our major keys to success, and this is our only way for continual improvement. While our request for the budget amount remains level funded, the work and training with key staff, like basic skills, department heads, curriculum leaders, and other instructional leaders, will then share that information with their colleagues most of the time through their PLC, or the professional learning time that we've built in weekly. The focus continues to be around effective implementation of the Common Core. Dues and fees. We've been very selective with the memberships we belong to. This supports our learning as well. We have reduced, actually, since this budget book has been put out, we've reduced this line over the past few years, but since this budget book is put out, you'll notice two items in red that we'll be recommending removing from the total. The total dollar amount is $210, but we do scrutinize this line each and every year. Instructional staffing. This is where I would really request that you all turn to page 9 of your budget book. With respect to certified staffing, I'd first like to start with the first column, which is the 12-13 budgeted column, showing the staffing requests that we request for last year's that were in last year's budget book. There has been an additional 2.23 FTEs increase since then. You will recall that there was not one but two hot spots with respect to elementary classroom size that we discussed early this fall at a Board of Ed meeting. We used one of our budgeted contingency teachers, but did have to add an additional teacher. You'll also recall that we decided not to fill 3 paraprofessional positions and instead use those funds to hire a resource teacher at Waterford High School. Due to enrollment-driven needs, we didn't need as much Latin FTE, and we did some creative staffing that actually reduced our need for some literacy coaching FTEs as well. Finally, as Jerry mentioned, we've invested this year in an in-district special education program, which would further prevent costly out-of-district placements. And so we did hire this year an additional autism teacher. This brings our certified staffing FTEs to 254.89. So from this new baseline, we need 4 different staff, but we also see where we can reduce 2. Let me explain in greater detail. This is one example where we've pushed ourselves to be innovative. We've been wrestling with how to staff TAG for several years. And we see the need to support teachers with the significant initiative of the Common Core with respect to math. So we currently have, if you look up here, really 3 FTEs, and I've kind of circled them in red, or squared them in red. And those FTEs, really, the 3 people cover 2 different responsibilities and cover 4 different buildings. When Jerry quoted Steve Jobs that a small change you make can create a newer world, this is an example. By redeploying 1 FTE from our high school, because we're reducing 2 there, we're able to, in essence, have, as you see here, 1 staff member meet the needs of our accelerated students in TAG, and then also be able to oversee the math tutors on a daily basis, because they'll each be located in 1 building full-time, So there's efficiencies if there's no travel, there's no downtime, and they'll see this math tutor on a daily basis, and then also be able to work around their direct teaching with TAG students to provide other classroom teachers some coaching with respect to math. We truly think that this is well worth one FTE investment for the efficiency of time and the benefit that the district will receive. Jody.
Would that teacher go to one school per day during the week, or would she rotate?
Yeah, great question. So instead of having, currently we have like one teacher service 2 schools with TAG, and another teacher service an elementary and middle school with TAG, and then we have one teacher rotate to 3 elementary schools throughout the week servicing math support. We're saying, by adding really a little bit of time and saying it's one person's job to do TAG in each school full-time, and the other half-time, because they're there full-time, will be really to provide math coaching support and then oversee our math tutors who do direct service to children. That frees up. Right now the elementary schedules are locked based upon when TAG is delivered. So that frees up the schedule and allows for a little more creativity in scheduling. And because the teacher is not traveling, it provides actually more time to work in classrooms coaching, and it provides daily oversight of the math tutor, where right now, with our one staff member rotating to 3 schools, at best they get to see the tutor once every 3 days.
So this is a full-time position at each school.
Okay, and are the elementary schools still on the 6-day schedule?
They are. Other questions on this? This is innovative. This really kind of answers some concerns the elementary principals have been having, and really for a little more FTE gives us a lot of bang.
And it's a redeployment of a staff position from the high school to cover this need.
We are adding an additional school counselor, as Jerry mentioned, to the middle school. We have tried to support the middle school with only 2 guidance counselors for the past 3 years. Prior to this, we've had a guidance counselor per grade level. As I mentioned with Kelly Shannon's presentation of the class summary report last month, stressing the state-mandated changes with respect to the student success plans, and as I've already talked about, developing a comprehensive school counseling program, which really will provide a little more group work by our existing counselors. We really need to lower the student-to-counselor ratio. Right now it's at 337 to 1. By adding a counselor, that drops to 1 to 218. We really think that this one additional counselor is what the middle school needs.
And Craig, did you say that we would receive more information on that program, the school counseling,
So the school
in the
counseling
spring?
would be an adopted curriculum
In the spring.
that we would bring to the board this spring.
Okay. Good.
Jody?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No.
Go back to the math teachers. I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but high school students are a lot different than elementary school students. Now, the teachers we have in mind going to the elementary schools.
So be a posted position.
Oh, okay. You're not definitely sending 2 particular teachers.
Oh, no. They're not coming from the high school there. What we're just talking about, number-wise, the redeployment, reducing 2 teaching positions. Remember now, we have 8 retirements.
So let me go back to the slide for a moment.
They're not-
When I mentioned about redeploying 2 staff, we're saying that through lower subscriptions, lower class sizes in 2 of our departments at the high school, history and English, we're going to reduce 1 FTE, one teacher from each. This is done through retirement, and if not retirement, it could be resulting in a reduction of force for a person. This would allow us to then add a classroom teacher to Oswegatchie to, again, reduce class sizes, and I'm going to point you to the class sizes in a moment, and enhance the math instruction for the elementary. And then we're adding 2 teachers. One would be a middle school counselor, and one would be a contingency teacher, and I'll speak about that in a moment. So we talked about the guidance counselor. The contingency teacher is really to put out any hot spots that we may have. I'd really like to direct you to Appendix E on page 94 for a moment, where I can go over class sizes in a little more detail. So looking at the class sizes under the FY14 columns on page 94, you can see there's no apparent hotspots yet. Jerry has really worked to lower class sizes in this area. There's a high degree of confidence in enrollment for grades 1 through 12 because those children are already students in our school system. Kindergarten is always a wild card, where we can budget 2 classrooms of 18 in each school, but it's truly hard to predict if that'll be the case. If we don't need this contingency teacher, we will not fill it, and the funds will be returned back to the town. There's no questions there. I'll move on to grants. On page 91, if we can just flip, I'd like to just show you how we use our grants. We've been receiving less than 100%, closer to 90% now for a couple of years with respect to Title I and Title IIA. We've budgeted 90% this year, which we feel is a proper allotment. And as you can see on page 91, the budgeted amount really is used to offset some of the staff that are listed above salaries. And you can see exactly where it says Title I, how we offset some of their salaries. And when we go into the budget detail for staffing, you'll see that those are less by that amount. In addition to supporting part of the teacher's salary for Title II, we do receive funds for professional development, which we use in conjunction with the Board of Ed funds. Support staffing. And for this, sorry to have you keep flipping back and forth, but I would like you to focus on page 19 for a moment. With respect to support staffing, on page 19, I want to first start with the 12-13 budget column, showing the requested of staffing for last year in the budget book. There has been a decrease of 3.35 FTEs since then. You'll recall that the reduction was of not filling 3 paraprofessionals, and we were also able to run each library with only 1 library assistant. And through redeployment via an opening to reduce the middle school from 2 to 1. We've also reduced the hours of a crossing guard due to not having students for one of the bus runs. We did need to add a para to the new autism program, which is our in-district special ed program, making our present total 144.31 FTEs. For this upcoming year, we are requesting an additional security guard for our new Waterford High School. Several years ago, we've had 2 SROs at Waterford High in addition to our youth officer. With the layout of the new school, we really need this additional support. Looking ahead of what we anticipate this budget allow us to do would be really to implement the school counseling curriculum, the music curriculum, and our improved Common Core language arts. to begin the renewal of history and art, to support the faculty with Common Core, to continue aligning and enhancing our tiered or support for children who need a little extra support when it comes to language arts and math, and to build the K-8 capacity for math instruction as this year's budget has afforded us to really start that work at the high school. With respect to assessment, we really want to develop the standards-based report card, grades 1 through 8. We've started it with K this year. And we want to integrate Hess's work, Bloom's taxonomy, and Webb's thinking to increase our rigorous assessments. And with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Questions from the board? Jody?
Is there anything extra about our reading program in elementary school? I'm happy to see more books for libraries.
Yeah.
But I know we're concentrating on math, but
So,
reading is so important. So
absolutely. So, back in 2009, we did a K-12 language arts curriculum in which we've enjoyed some new resources. With the Common Core, we are doing some curriculum alignments, but using those existing resources. And we've always had a language arts basic skill coordinator at each elementary, but we were really lacking math. And so we tried it with one teacher to rotate around 3 schools, and we think the more efficient way is to have a person in the building full time to do that part of the time and to do tag part of the time.
And our focus district-wide has been on literacy, very strong.
Other questions? John?
Counseling, Clark Lane. Somehow the number of 1 to 218, even with a new person, seems like a lot.
It's got to be.
How much time does a student spend with a counselor?
So
Periodic
currently our counseling is a little more on the as needed, on the reactive side, in the sense that if there's a child with needs, they can get some contact with the counselor. What you'll see in April or May when we bring you the curriculum is that we really want to be a little more proactive by engaging them in some small group lessons throughout the course of the year. And Don and Jim are working on scheduling ways to make that happen. That will allow the children to begin thinking about not only their future goals with the student success plans, but then also able to kind of handle some developmental issues. And so it's going to, our whole program is shifting in design.
And John, really to be direct, not enough, to be honest with you. And that's why we're proposing it. It was a cut, and in working this through, our goal has been to restore where we could in a very fiscally responsible way. And so you have a minor improvement here. I'll just be honest with you. It's been needed. We would have presented it a year ago, but we were dealing with the health insurance elephant. And so this is what we need.
My comment is really the other way, that I'm not quite.
We might need more.
But yeah, that's my point.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know all of what a counselor and a student's interactions are, but one for every 218. I mean, I couldn't keep track of my 4 kids. We keep talking about Common Core curriculum. I believe implementation of Common Core curriculum, another state mandate. Do you have any way of determining what the cost of implementing this next state mandate is? I mean, what is the cost? It's a defense for our budget.
Yeah, it's a great question.
It's not. It certainly would not be of the magnitude of the 2 drivers that you identified here. But if there is a figure that we can arrive at and defend that says, the cost of implementing Common Core curriculum is, I'll just make up a number, $50,000. somehow I think that should be highlighted.
And I'm gonna say, it's much more
in the
than that.
executive summary. Well, I think it should be highlighted, because even if we have to defend a 1.5% increase, there's a certain portion of that is, once again, we're doing just what we have to do.
Right.
What we're told we have to do. So I would suggest that you think about putting that in the executive summary letter. And then my last question has to do with the curriculum that we're going to review in April, May timeframe. Your next to the last chart would indicate to me that we would not implement that curriculum until not this school year, but the following school year. Am I reading that correctly?
School counseling, they're working on writing it right now.
Be implemented.
And we're in the early stages, as Kelly mentioned, with some of the student success plans, but really the full implementation will be this August. And with music, I know Tim has a couple classes that the board will see that are new, and it will be offered in this year's program of studies for the students coming in the 13-14 school year.
Okay, I guess I'm just confused about the FY14.
So the next level of work, this is when we say implementing, we will be implementing those curriculum
In this budget,
with this
under this
budget, and we'll be beginning to revise the curriculums of history and art
for the
for
2014
FY15.
Okay, and will we be reviewing music curriculum or music and art?
This year, this April, music and school counseling.
So
So
counseling and music curriculum changes will be in the 2013-2014 school year.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Jody?
A quick question about the guidance counselors at Park Lane. Are they assigned a full class, like one counselor has the whole 6th grade, or do you divide it up, like, in thirds, like a counselor will have 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders?
So we're looking at the best way to do that with an additional counselor. Right now, you have a counselor that has half the school and the other half the school, all 3 grades. So there's a couple different models, and I've had initial conversations with Jim if this is funded, which direction we should go in, and we'll be bringing you that information.
Because I think, personally, I know if you have the whole 8th grade class, even though you've been with them since 5th grade, you travel with them, it's a lot of students to, take care of at the end of the year to figure out if they're going to walk to high school, if they're going to go to other schools.
There are pros and cons with each model.
Right.
You're right.
I just have just a couple of, and I know, and I apologize, we're running a little bit over, but there's no policy that tells us we have to leave at 9 o'clock, so I hope you'll indulge us just for a few more minutes. And then the board, I just want to reiterate that we can come back. I have a number of smaller questions that we just let slide, but we can wrap it up at the end. And, of course, the budget we have on January 24th before we take any final action. So just so you know, if you have other questions relating to any of these pieces. But I just feel that I'd like to say, and I say this all the time, part of what we drive instruction, curriculum development, professional development to raise student achievement. I'm always amazed at how much we do with such little funding. If you look at the professional development, it's stayed stable over the years at a very small amount. And what John brought, it was something I was going to mention with the Common Core and all that we're being asked to do. It may be time to just review a little bit to see if there's anything. I know you do a lot within the training and development internally, and you try to save in every aspect, but with all these various mandates, maybe that line we should look at. Maybe there's more we can even be doing with professional development. On the contingency teacher piece, I think that's wise for us to have that in there. So last year we did have to come back, so I approve that, and I'm very complimentary on what you did with the staff. We've talked about TAG for many years. This is a big, big improvement for us. I just hope if there is a teacher that's lost at the high school that I hope it's through attrition that we can manage that. But thank you for all that hard work that went into there. So we'll move right over to technology.
We'll go to technology. And Ed is going to do this in a virtual environment, so get ready.
Okay, this year's budget supports year one of the Waterford Public Schools Technology Plan, and here's what we were able to accomplish. We deployed a new mobile lab for the Clark Lane Middle School. Actually, we purchased it. It's in the works for being deployed as a Chromebook cart, which is kind of a new thing, kind of a netbook style. We have regional printers, which we've deployed at the middle school and the high school, which allows the students to print from anywhere and then pick up their print job using a RFID ID badge from any printer at their convenience. We've also tied in the ID badges to the Tardy Pass printer so that when a student is late at the high school, rather than waiting in line at the window, they can just walk up to the window and swipe the card, and their picture comes up on the screen, and then a pass will print out with their picture on it, and they're on their way. We've done the projector replacements that we had planned to do at Clark Lane, so we've got a brand new wing full of projectors over there. And we have continued to deploy the virtual VMware software district-wide to centralize our servers in this building. I'd ask you to turn to page 77 through 79 of your budget book. This represents the spending plan for year 2 of our tech plan. And this is our equipment list for the coming year. It's similar to last year. It's $60,000 for infrastructure equipment. Another Chromebook cart for next year. Again with the printers and Ultrabooks for teachers. 20 Ultrabooks, and those are just to replace the computers that break. So we're not adding additional. It's just a pool. Some more storage. Our storage demand increases every year, and this supports that. And then our end-of-life projector replacement continues at Clark Lane.
End of year.
End of life, yes. They have a life of about 6 years. And if you could turn to page 56 through 59 of the budget book. I'm going to talk about the software budget, which has 3 components. First, I'll speak to the network operating software. This list of software basically provides security and management to the system. It's kind of the foundation of everything we do with computers. I'm not going to go through every item, but it's your basic operating system and protection and security. That continues on the next page. So $45,074 of the $207,448 is used for the network operating software. The next software category is school system software. This particular software is used to support our school libraries, school counseling, student databases. It also supports the emergency communication system to parents and staff. And the last part of that list is for the school nurses and HR department and the website. And that category for school system software represents $111,324 of the $207,448 software budget. The last category of software is curriculum software, and this basically supports the curriculum and instruction. The licenses for science, world language, reading, and other subject matter. $51,050 is out of the $207,448 is the curriculum software. Internet communications is the next page. If we turn the clock back to 2007, 2008, we spent $124,464 total. After E-rate, it was $74,678. So $74,678 was used to support this in 2008. Now we pay $17,700. And this is the fiber connections that tie our schools together.
That's a success story.
Yeah.
That truly is
Yeah.
a success story. And to go further, it's robust. It's much faster than the $74,000 that we were spending.
Yeah, it's 100 times faster than T1 line, and it also, our telephones and video and other services ride on that fiber when we used to have to figure out other ways for that. You could turn to page 31 through 33 of your budget book. This is the support category. These accounts are used to support special expertise required to maintain certain systems. So the IT department has a lot of responsibility, not just computers, but there's telephones, there's security, there's video, there's alarms, and different types of systems. And so sometimes we have to seek help outside if we don't know how to get very technical with certain things. If you could turn to page 60 through 65 of the budget book, we have $38,500 to address annual repairs to the equipment and infrastructure. So this list is basically items that break, hardware breaks, and if it's not under warranty, but it's not that old, we'll send it out to get repaired rather than buying a new piece of equipment. So in summary, the bottom line is a slight increase of $446 over last year's budget. We had 8 staff members in the department, and we support the town and the schools 24/7. It's the same amount of staff as we had last year, but there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of things to support. Systems are getting more complicated every year. The police are constantly upgrading and improving their side. Schools are doing the same thing. So this is serving us well right now. And the positions are help desk, network engineer, system support technician, PC support tech, application support tech, system applications analyst. And if you have any questions.
Any questions for Rich? Jody?
Do we have a program that if there's a fire at the high school, we go back to the students and be in these classes and you can account for everybody?
I don't have anything like that right now.
How do you do that?
In the new high school, we're going to have an emergency responder system that's tied to the telephone system, and I think that's in line with what you're talking about.
But I guess right now, to answer your question, every teacher has to take attendance, and so if there is an emergency and evacuation, each teacher is responsible for their class to make sure that they're out of the building safely and to account for them when they're outside. And if someone's missing, then that gets telegraphed to our SROs, Youth Officer Administration, in which they then look to find them.
The only reason I'm asking is because I have a son, he's in high school, and he didn't know he was going to his last period of time, he was supposed to. And I was just wondering.
I want you to know with these new IDs at Waterford High School, we can find them anywhere.
I had to was walking around.
And, I just have a question on the curriculum software. Do any of these companies, do they allow us to use the software for a specific amount of time to try it out to see if it's working and get the teach? Okay, so all this has been vetted through the teachers?
So for curricular software, the vetting process is if there's something that's worthy, it's checked out by a department head to see should we have it. It's piloted on a free trial. Then it has to be checked by IT to make sure that it will run on our systems well and integrate. Then it goes to my level for final approval to make sure it really matches the curriculum before it's implemented.
And then we get the result is a consistent software base across the district rather than having, one elementary school using this, another one using a different one. So that's the result.
And it seemed when we went back to the technology plan that we just approved last year, and I went back through it to look over it, looks like with some of all of these new enhancements that we're actually beyond where we thought we would be at specific points with the new high school, with all of our students will be able to access at the same time. We were looking at a goal, so we're really ahead. So are you doing?
Well, with the construction project, it really has allowed us the T1 costs, the fiber costs, and technology upgrades in the construction. So we are, in that case, a little bit ahead of maybe where we projected 3 years ago, because it's hard to project where technology will be each year.
Well, and it's great to see that we're having all these substantial savings, but you're also saying at the same time that the quality of the service is being improved, so it's a good for us. Oh, sorry, Tim. I don't know everybody else to be.
Curious, are we considering or are we looking forward to the demands that we're going to have when we implement the new generation standardized testing? It's going to require devices for all students who are being tested.
Yeah, we're not only considering that, but at our middle school and high school, we're piloting some assessment, the CBAC assessment this year. And so there's been many requests from the State Department to the district about our capacity for such an endeavor. And Ed and I have been working to make sure that we're ready to go, and if we anticipate that will be, at least the equipment, a smooth transition.
Thank you, Tim. I think that brings us to the end of our presentations, and again, just to the board, I'm going to go to our visitors and the public tonight, but any questions you have relating to any of this aspect, we can have time again during the next session. So at this time, I know you're tired probably, but are there any questions relating to any of the pieces that we've covered tonight? Bill? And please, in case they don't know, identify yourself.
Bill King, I'm a member of the Board of Finance. I noticed the Isaac School wasn't listed on the list of schools. You don't have anybody at Isaac School now?
We do, but as a charter school, so the different heads of school choice, charter schools are free for us. So at the Isaac School, we currently have 7 children. We expect maybe 10 next year, but that's at a no cost to us.
And for us non-educational professionals, neophytes, and so on, would you provide a thumbnail layman's explanation of the Common Core curriculum and its implications and so on? So when you come to the Board of Finance, give us a 10 or 15 minutes data dump.
Bill, we actually put the board through a workshop this fall.
Was good.
We videotaped it. It's online, and any snowy night, any snowy day.
We have a
We'll get it to you.
We have
We'll actually
literature.
put it into the budget.
We can also give him that piece of literature that the board received on it. Yeah. Thank you, Bill. Other questions? Comments? Andrea?
At one point we were talking about the copiers being rented. Was that ever considered?
The what?
All these copiers that we have
So they are.
Replace.
They are rented?
Yep, and so,
Right.
in the copier lease, so you might recall back in 2000, I think we replaced all of our copiers at once, and it was a large hit to the budget, probably close to 1% increase at that time just for the copiers. After that, we went on a leasing program, and the annual cost to maintain that is at 52 and change that you see there. But we have done that.
Okay.
Still on that. Other questions? Rich, and then...
All of the electronic gadgets that the students have, iPads, laptops, whatever they may be, are those purchased outright by the town, or are they on a lease basis as well?
Those are purchased outright.
Has there ever been any exploration to a lease arrangement, of course? Available?
No.
Go ahead. The cost is, when you're looking at a $400 tool, an iPad or whatever, it wouldn't make sense to do the leasing.
But the volume wouldn't have an effect?
Well, see, the other area that we're exploring is bring your own device, so it's just not the school system, the town paying for everything. So as we move into the new high school, that will be an area that we'll be exploring. We're actually working on that, but that's down the road so that the community isn't just affording the whole bill.
What we can say, Rich, is if you can speak about the virtual desktops, because that is an efficiency to having them each standalone desktop.
Yeah, we're going to be deploying 198 virtual desktops in the new high school. They're the same thing as thin clients. A lot of you might know them as thin clients from the older days, but they're virtual desktops, and there's no brains in the computer, it's just a dumb terminal, and all the processing happens on the back end. So there's no hard drive, there's no memory, there's none of that stuff.
No maintenance.
And there's no keyboard and screen, so there's really not any maintenance. When they break, they're kind of disposable, like a clock radio. You just throw them out, you don't fix them. But another good thing about that technology is that kids can get to it from home. It's based on license count, so a kid can log on to the virtual desktop system from home. It doesn't need to be one of these devices. It could be his own computer at home, and then his desktop will appear, or his or her desktop will appear at home on their computer that they would see in school, access to all their resources. So it's changing a lot, and when we get into leasing, it complicates things because,
It's not cost effective.
So is the number of virtual desktops we have this year coming from high school, will that be expanded on a yearly basis?
If they're successful, yes. Right now we have a pilot of 60 of them. We have 30 at the high school lab and 30 in the middle school lab. And so far we've had a lot of good reviews. It's been a success. So the next step is to deploy the 198 to the new high school, and I'd love to see the whole district go that way eventually, because that would save us a lot of money.
Yes, Mr. Valentini.
With all the money that was towards technology security at the school, what I'm hearing, see every part of the school, all the cameras. Can you just explain the reason why we would need to add security officers in lieu of security officers we already have?
Yeah, so really with the three-level school design, and where we have at the second level our dean of students there, maybe as the century point, but if he's around, we would probably want an SRO at that level. At the first level, kind of by the auditorium, we would have a century point of the athletic director's secretary, but we would probably want an SRO, and then we would want the youth officer kind of like around in the first floor in the school. And again, the SROs have to also look at the parking lots and everything else. I think I've captured it, Don, but
And I think each and every time we've walked the building, and Don and I have done this a number of times, and I just hit the conclusion we really need an additional person.
Cameras do allow you to see almost.
They do.
well, they do. And again, but are we going to invest the time, the cameras being watched real time, the large amount of cameras, or are they there for, if there's an incident, that we have the recording to then find out what happened? And I think by having an SRO or safety officer walk the building more, and then to have the cameras, if there's something that happened, it's a great compliment to each other.
Focus more on presence and the cameras.
Yes. Presence really causes students to think twice.
Jody and then John?
I just want to make a comment on that. I attend a lot of the home basketball games, and I was happy to hear we were going to have another security guard there of the way that the lobby is now in the high school. We have children running around all the time, and I just think it's for a safety measure if they see a security guard walking around periodically rather than just they're running up and down the steps and, going in the elevator, and I just think it might help with the security of the students. I'm happy to see that.
Thank you, Chuck.
Athletic event.
Yes, not during the student day.
Don't worry, Don. Does anyone else have a question? Oh, excuse me, Andrea?
Thank you. With the special education students that are placed out of district, the transport is to places like Manchester and Bridgeport, I think you said. Are these day programs 5 times a week?
So depending on the child's needs, and Kathy will speak more next week in detail about this. There are some partial programs that might only be half day, but maybe 5 days a week. There's some partial programs that are maybe a couple times a week only, and there are some full time. So we really have the array. And it's
Based on student needs.
So these services, could they possibly be provided here in town?
Well, one of the things,
Depends what they are, but looking into.
and that's exactly what we're doing now. But there are also some services that are best at these facilities versus
sure,
without.
depends what they are, absolutely.
So we'll look at each of them.
An example of we could have outplaced a couple more students who have significant autism needs. We decided instead to build our own program internally to do a cost reduction. So where it's feasible, and as Jerry said, where it fits best for us, we're looking at those.
Good, thank you.
Rich?
That program should grow, but would it be conceivable that you bring other students to our district?
Yeah, it really would, Rich. Yeah.
And that's part of our plan if this works. If I...
Go ahead.
I have a question about the TAG program. Are you going to present that a little further in detail next time?
No, go ahead.
You can ask on the tag.
I was just wondering, the TAG program that you're proposing for the elementary with the math teacher combination, are these teachers going to be trained in TAG that you're looking for? Or truly, because it's a different...
It really is. And so we have invested, and Kathy will say this next week, using the William & Mary school that has a outstanding TAG program, summer training for the teachers that enter and teach TAG. And so with our new staff, you'll see some conference money budgeted to really indoctrinate and make sure that we have correct TAG instruction.
Thank you.
Okay. I think it's last chance. Do you have any more questions? If not, we'll see you at...
coming attractions
Thank you.
next week. What we're going to do is we'll begin with building and grounds. Jay will present the building and grounds budget. We'll take a look at the special education budget and then each of our schools and athletics. And then we'll wrap it up with anything that we need to further research for the 24th.
All right. And any of the questions that you may not have had a chance and you want to review what we did tonight, we'll have another opportunity. I have a couple of lingering small ones. But thank you. I do need a motion to adjourn. Jody, second by Kevin. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you. Thanks. Great job. Yeah. It's a little confusing for me, though. I like the way we do it, but I get, like, I'm not